Hello everybody. Alright, this is the first official video on the channel. This is kind of a stream of consciousness review of kind of a first look at Remnant 2. Now I checked this out on stream a little bit ago, and I kind of played through the initial tutorial stuff as well as maybe about 2 hours into the game. I kind of did that, so I think what I'm going to do with the streams of the first looks of this game is that'll be kind of the first impressions, to where I'm going into a game completely blind. Basically, we're going to go from character creation to maybe an hour or two into the game, depending on how much it kind of holds my attention. Now, a lot of that is going to be fine-tuning. You get to see me kind of work through the kinks of what may be a player's first time through the game, as well as kind of see me try to understand the basic mechanics as well as what the game is trying to onboard you with. Now, that's very important for a lot of games. I find that a lot of games, while they may be fun after a couple of hours, in some cases there are some games that don't necessarily open up until 10 hours in. That's what the streams are for. The streams are going to be there to kind of see if within the first couple hours of a game, are you going to enjoy it? Especially because Steam especially has a refund policy of, as long as you have under 2 hours into a game and you've had it for less than, I believe it is 2 weeks, then you can refund the game. Now, that's very important. There are some games to where you may not know if you like it within 2 hours. And in some cases, there are some games where past the 2 hour point is kind of where it starts getting good, right? A lot of JRPGs do this. There are some kind of hardcore survival or just straight up hardcore first person shooters that are kind of like this. And on top of that, depending on your PC specs, I have a pretty beefy PC. I run a 3090 and an i7 with 64 gigs of RAM. It may take you at least 30-40 minutes just to dial in the settings to get it to where you want the frame rate to be acceptable, as well as just how you kind of like games to feel, right? I kind of like to go for performance first. I like at least a smooth 60, if not more. 120 is kind of, I use 120 hertz monitors at least for both of my monitors, and I generally like to shoot above 100. If I can't get that, then I start to kind of not want to play the game because it doesn't feel smooth to me. But again, I like the streams to kind of be the first blush, the first impressions. These videos are going to be a little bit more delving into what you can kind of expect to see kind of past that first impressions point. At this point, I've played maybe close to 3 hours of the game. I have gone through kind of the first area / dungeon. I have unlocked some systems. I've obviously gotten as you can see, I've kind of gotten a few items, both due to the pre-order pack, and I've gotten to choose my archetype, and just been able to experience a little bit more of the game. Now, I am still getting tutorial messages. As you can see here, I've got a couple things that are showing up for weapon mod upgrades, and other things to spend my currency on. But again, this is kind of past that initial kind of sticking point for some people, which may be the first hour or so of a game. And I'm hoping the live streams will be there, so that way, if you want to see how I felt about a game kind of first blush, then you can kind of watch those, and it will kind of, I won't say that it will replace your 2 hours into a game, but it may supplement it. And it may be something that you can watch, on your off time, or when you maybe skip through the VOD a little bit, skip through some of the boring parts of me just talking with chat, and you can kind of see is that 2 hours going to be worth your initial investment in the game. Who knows? It may not be. It may be. But those are what the live streams are for. These recorded videos are going to be a little bit more. I won't have chat to interact with. I don't really have anybody to bounce off of. It is just me. It is just me trying to play through the game and give you a little bit deeper, maybe analysis, because then I won't have to be looking at chat. I can kind of focus entirely on the game. I will also probably be talking a little bit less, just because there are parts where I can kind of let the game carry itself a little bit. But overall, I'd also like these videos to be probably a little bit shorter. So let's get started. As you can see, there is an upgrade system. I just unlocked this, and what it is so you get, there is currency in this game, similar to the first one, similar to a lot of Soulsborne games, to where up there you can see scrap, right? It's kind of like the souls of this game. Now, an interesting difference between this and a Soulsborne game, which these games will be compared to, because the first one was compared to it. This game is compared to a Soulsborne game in that it is somewhat punishing difficulty. The combat is definitely a little bit slower. It is a little bit more methodical in some cases, to where if you are jumping into situations a little too quickly and not necessarily thinking about an exit strategy or just how this game kind of throws obstacles at you, you can very quickly be overwhelmed. And it can definitely try to be punishing. And there are some cases where it will throw multiple enemies at you to try to challenge you to overcome, right? But just like Soulsborne game, you have currency to upgrade your items. Now, I just unlocked this system. It actually started prompting me, and I said, okay, well, let's go back to kind of the quest hub, which is Ward 13. Players of the first game will kind of notice, like, this looks very familiar to kind of the quest hub of the first game, to where you have this giant glowing crystal that is kind of your teleport point out. You have all your vendors here. This is also seems to be where a lot of the NPCs come to hang out. I'm assuming that if you rescue an NPC or discover a new mechanic, this is kind of where they end up, right? But let's go through the upgrade system. I'd like to upgrade my equipment. Let's just look at my shotgun. No. AS-10 Bulldog. We're going to upgrade it, right? And upgrade it again. Now an AS Bulldog +2, right? Basically, it's exactly what you think. It's going to upgrade your gun for better damage, better ammo, better firing rate, better magazine. Your special abilities which are called mods, or I think mutators in this one is the other one. Yeah, mutators is the second one. Basically, your mod is this kind of gives you an active. This is very similar to the first game, if I'm remembering it correctly, but you'll have the weapon mod that gives you kind of an ability, a used ability that builds up as you do damage. And then you have the mutator, this is a little bit more of a passive. And as you can see, on the actual mutator itself, there is kind of I'm assuming that means if I hit level 10, it is going to, on the weapon, it is going to give me kind of that additional effect on it, right? So pretty rudimentary. That's very, very similar to, some of this is a little bit similar to how Dark Souls did it. Some of it is not. Being able to play with these, like change out your special ability mod and change kind of your mutator. Dark Souls does have an equivalent, but it's a little bit more permanent. These you can kind of change out as you want to kind of suit your playstyle and your current playstyle and your current loadout. You can actually even take these off, right? If I want to take off that concussive shot, I can take it off. In Dark Souls, you really can't do that. Once you've kind of chosen to go down a particular path with a weapon, it's kind of stuck down there until you use currency to pull it back off. This costs nothing to kind of change. You also get 3 different weapons. Again, different from Dark Souls, but this is par for the course for Remnant. In the first Remnant, now it has been a little bit since I played the first Remnant, so my memory might be failing me a little bit. But, you could have 2 weapons and you would have a melee. And from what I remember, though, in this one, you can kind of just use the melee. I don't remember that being the case from Remnant 1. Again, it has been a little bit. That may have been in the first game. I just can't remember. It's been quite a while since the first Remnant. So that was the upgrade system. The mod crafting system, I actually don't know if this is a new system or not, but we're gonna go through it together. So I got an item and it kind of told me, hey, you can now craft a new weapon mod, right? So I was like, okay, let's go take a look. And it looks like, oh no, I remember this now. Okay, so I was actually able to craft the concussive shot first. So this is not a new system. It just told me, I actually just got this alkahest powder and this from one of the bosses that I just fought at the end of the last dungeon. It was kind of like a, kind of reminded me a lot of the Undead Burg or the kind of initial starting town from Bloodborne. There's a lot of kind of creepy, crazed village people with guys who look like they had, you know, steel helmets on to block all your shots. But let's go ahead and let's see. So where's a vault? This looks kind of fun. Let's pick that up.
Okay.
Hey, I got an achievement. So let's, as you can see here, so, you know, it kind of already equipped the Witchfire mod to this open slot here, because I didn't have one there before. So I'm assuming it just did that. So let's kind of take a look and I'll kind of show you. Actually, did it change the look of the gun? I didn't notice that before. Unequip. It does. That's kind of neat. I don't know if that part is new or not. That is actually really cool. I actually didn't even notice. Oh, okay. So you're finding out something that I just found out. I did not know that it actually changed the appearance of the weapon depending on the mod. Does this also do it? It looks like it did. Oh, okay. Neat. So yeah, you do get a little bit of aesthetic choice. You know, so you can kind of go for the drip factor if you really want to and drip out all your guns, but that's kind of neat. I like the look of that. So let's test this out. So this is something, I don't remember a system like this being in the first Remnant, to where there was like a targeting dummy to where you can kind of test out your damage. It's kind of nice. Let's see. And as you can see there, so as you kind of do damage with the gun, you build up energy inside of the mod. You press F and you get kind of this, you get an ability that you can use, right? And I believe that was from the first Remnant. That was in the first Remnant as well, to where you kind of went through this interesting rotation of doing damage with your guns, using an ability, and then kind of rinse and repeating. And of course, just like in any Soulsborne, any sort of Soulsborne like game, you gotta dodge roll. You dodge roll a lot. A lot of enemies, even though they may be melee, or they use rudimentary ranged weapons, like I believe in the area that I was just in, they were throwing knives or using kind of like these muzzle loaders. They would shoot the projectiles and they would move just fast enough to where if you were not paying attention, you would not be able to react. But if you're paying attention, you can kind of roll out of the way. Same thing with like a big, huge enemy tries to come and hit you. They would kind of have the big building swings that you were supposed to dodge, and you kind of just dodge over like that. Now, something that you can't quite see right now, but you will see in a little bit whenever I go through some combat, is the stamina down there at the bottom. It does not get used if you are not in combat. If you are just kind of just running around, doing your thing, it does not burn through your stamina, right? It only starts burning through your stamina if you are actually in combat, at least from what I've seen. Again, some things I'm still learning. We are still only 3 hours in, so, but show you a little bit of combat in it. The performance is okay. I was doing a little, because there was a little bit of hitching at the very beginning, and I had to turn down some settings. You know, I play on 1440p windowed full screen, but that's mostly because I like to alt tab and do other stuff. I had seen reports that this DLSS, we're actually going to turn down music just a tad. It is a little loud in my ears. But the DLSS, from what I understand, I think still broken. I think I was reading in a couple places at Digital Foundry forum that this DLSS is still broken, and the only thing that works is still performance. I would advise that you drop this down to maybe medium or high. Like I said, I have a pretty beefy PC. I can play this on ultra if I wanted to, but I can definitely feel a little bit of chugginess whenever I am playing, and you can probably see it on the stream that I was kind of having some issues with changing up. I was kind of having to change the settings just a bit in order to properly get it to where I want it to be. Because like I said, I like to favor a little bit higher frame rate whenever I play. Now, I was doing a quest. So this map is really nice. I don't remember the map being this good in Remnant 1. In the first Remnant, it was definitely, I believe in the first Remnant, it was a little difficult for me to tell where I was. I got lost a lot. There was definitely a lot of wandering in Remnant 1. So this one, that's definitely improved. And honestly, it's just a good map system, right? It's got, as you can see, there's multi-level. That's like a big clock tower that I was exploring a little bit ago. And this is kind of very easily, you can kind of very easily and quickly tell where you've been, where you've not been. So we're gonna go over there, right? Yep, here we get some combat. And as you can see there, so let's get this thing. So again, very kind of somewhat easy to telegraph, but if you're not paying attention, it can definitely cause you some damage. All right, so you just saw there I leveled up. So whenever you level up, oop, I think they're still yelling at me. Let's clear this out before I go into any menus. So this game does the Dark Souls thing of it doesn't pause. I don't even think it pauses. Yeah, it doesn't even pause whenever I go into that. They will definitely still hit you. And I believe that is because there is an online component to this game to where you can make it so other Remnant players can join your game. I have mine set to friends only. Now, that might be a deal breaker for some of you, and that's completely understandable. I'm not 100% sure why there is not just an offline mode to where you can pause the game. At one point, I used to be in the camp of that's just how it was designed, but with that being said, that doesn't mean that it is good design. I do think that the game bothered to give you a difficulty slider, so they're certainly not trying to go for that full Dark Souls experience. So I don't really know why they didn't really include the session is now offline, right? But the game is still definitely going. Like, you can definitely still hear that guy clomping around looking for me. So I don't really know why they chose not to do that. So on level ups, you get bits and pieces kind of your class. Now, if I remember from the first one properly, when you chose your archetype, I kind of chose like the big beefy tanky boy as my archetype. He gets a lot of really cool things like a war stomp to where I like do like a cone of damage in front of me to where it does this really cool kind of earth shaker effect. But basically a lot of things that will enable me to be a big boy is kind of the big thing with this class. There are other classes, like there's a pet class that is very good at support and gets like a doggy or some sort of animal. It was a dog whenever I was looking at the screen. There's like a gunslinger where it looks like it focuses exclusively on kind of using lots of ranged weapons even more, as well as focuses on a lot of ammo generation. And I believe the other one is your archetype of sniping, to where it's probably got like a dead eye mechanic to where you shoot once and it does a high amount of damage, right? So, but in the first Remnant, while you chose your class, I think at some point it actually didn't matter, to where it just kind of ended up getting all the abilities, or so many abilities that your class would be irrelevant. It kind of really only affected your starting loadout, so to speak, like kind of what you started the game as. It eventually just ended up not mattering. You had you could reallocate your skills and stuff, so it didn't really matter what you decided to play as, which I thought was really nice, because that's something that Dark Souls is pretty unforgiving about, is once you... Oh, I ran out of ammo. Once you kind of commit down a path for your... Oh my god. Once you kind of commit down your path of a build in Souls games, that's kind of it. There's not a whole lot of going backwards. For the most part, there's definitely a couple places where you could respec, but it definitely wants you to commit to a certain build. And you can see I ran out of ammo here, so that's something that's really interesting, is that this game definitely does a lot of attrition based. Because you have guns, it definitely tries to force you to... Sometimes it definitely feels like it's almost trying to make me pick and choose my fights, which that is a very Soulsy thing, to where it's not that each enemy is necessarily deadly, but there are enough of them that do a little bit of damage to you each time that you kind of just die by 1,000 cuts. And as you can see there, again, like they kind of telegraph their attacks a lot, so you can very easily kind of jump around and be a nuisance, so to speak. But let's keep going that way. But that's a little bit of a slice of the combat, so I hope that is kind of enlightening for anybody who was looking for combat. There are these pig thingies. I keep shooting them, but they're not really... So far, they haven't really done a whole lot. Oh god.
Here they come.
There are crit spots. If I can hit one of these in the... You can kind of shoot them in the head. Keep making noise. There you go. That was a crit spot. So if it shows up in red, then you hit them in a crit spot. Most of the time, it's exactly where you think it's going to be. It's in the head. Now, I do believe there is damage drop-off. And there are certain abilities and weapons that seem to do more damage depending on the range that you're at. I believe for this class in general, I have like a extra 10% damage to the enemies within like 10 meters of me or something. So it definitely tries to like force you down an archetype, at least for now. Like I said, I would not be surprised if I eventually ended up getting items and other abilities and stuff that would allow me to kind of change and deviate from the archetype that I chose. The mod system definitely allows you a lot of freedom in how you want to play your class. And obviously, you know, this is still a game with shooty mechanics. You know, we have guns. There's not... The archetypes are a little bit off kilter, just because most of the time, you know, you have your damage, your support, and your tank class. This is not a one-to-one. This is definitely not as one-to-one as something like Elden Ring. Elden Ring, you know, you're either your strength build, a dex build, you know, your caster build that focuses on faith, or another type of, you know, stat. Also, there's like weapon archetypes, like you're focusing mostly on like a great sword or some sort of like rapier or short sword that attacks very fast. Elden Ring probably, but in this game, right now, you know, I have a close range weapon. That's the shotgun. It's high DPS up close, very, very kind of tight quarters gun. And then I have this kind of revolver that allows me to fight a little bit farther out. Now, this is another interesting thing that I really like about this game, is this is almost like a Diablo thing, to where inside of each of the kind of sub-worlds, there's a dungeon. Now, I don't know if these dungeons are randomized, or if there's a set path, or if they're procedurally generated. They definitely feel very cohesive. Like, there's definitely a through line to them. It doesn't feel like these are like chunks that are being spawned in, you know, with zeros and ones or some sort of seed. They definitely seem like they're tailored, and they may be. I don't know. I've not. I tried to stay away from spoilers on this game because the first one was such a huge surprise. It was so strange for somebody, this kind of no-name studio, to make a game that kind of required it to be very, very tight on mechanics, like a Souls game, and then they decided, well, we're just gonna add guns to it and give you a little bit more freedom, and also add this really cool kind of Cthulhu, H.P. Lovecraft like story that was just very, very, it was just really cool, because I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft stuff, his work anyway. I'm not, you know, he's a problematic author. That is neither here nor there. I just want to make sure that is clear. But I've always enjoyed his works. I've always enjoyed kind of that idea of horror, and horror is not necessarily dying. It can also just be seeing something that just drives you insane, or that your human mind cannot comprehend. And this kind of goes a lot into it. There's a lot of things that it delves into a lot of themes that H.P. Lovecraft covers in his books. And as you can see, we're in a little bit of a... They definitely put you in kind of interesting combat situations here. Whoa. To where they're kind of mixing up both close range issues, close range problems, as well as long range problems, as well as environmental effects. Excuse me for a second while I deal with this. Oh god. Okay. We dealt with the problem. So this is something that's always been really interesting about these types of games, is that they are not necessarily out to be tough and be hard in the same way that old arcade games used to be. Anybody who is familiar with that game design of like kind of old arcade games / old console games, was that they wanted them to be difficult, so that way either A, you would burn coins on it, right? So you would go to the arcade and, you know, you'd try to play, I don't know, Dragon's Lair, right? And that game would just straight up kill you. Not that you knew that it was going to kill you depending on which decision you were going to make. It just killed you because you just didn't happen to know that you needed to press A, or, you know, whatever the button input was, in order to dodge the dragon breath there, or dodge the spikes there. So they're not difficult in the sense of they're trying to be unfair, or at least good ones are not. They want you to face these problems, and they want you to figure out kind of like a elegant way to deal with them. Sometimes inelegant, depending on your playstyle. I deal with them in a very inelegant way. And Remnant 2 is not any different. Faces you with problems and asks you to solve them in, you know, some way that doesn't involve you dying. Which, it's not trying, like, it's giving me ample, like, you know, all of these sound cues and stuff, you know, the stingers, like the music, all these enemies talking, you know, the music changing and the tempo changing. It's not that it's trying to be unfair. It wants me to succeed. But it goes, hey, you stumbled into this area. You didn't necessarily do it, oh my god, in a safe way. So here are the consequences of your actions. And if you are in if you know, you get through the combat encounter like me, I'm now at half health. You know, the consequence is I now have to use up resources in order to proceed, right? Let's do this. And on top of that, you know, there's burning up bullets, burning up my heals, because just like in Dark Souls, if you look in the bottom left there, it's called the Dragon Heart. I think in this game, basically, it's this game's equivalent of an Estus flask. You will burn through resources trying to do fights. So you either want to get better, or get good, as the kids say, or try to figure out a way to get around the encounters. So that's another mechanic there. You just saw that there was like a little blue spot on the ground that I picked up. Those are trait points. I cannot remember if I get these on level up either. I'm starting to think that I don't. I can't remember. I would have to kind of level up again. Because I didn't get one on level up. But when you pick up those trait points on the ground, you can assign them to kind of these, well, traits, I guess. This one comes from my archetype, right? So because of my archetype, I have the strong back that allows me to remove, a certain amount of encumbrance. I believe that corresponds to weight. We can actually look at advanced stats there. So, by the way, press this. If you're at all interested in kind of delving into this game, just press R. Look at your stats. But inside of this, you can assign a point into kind of the trait and get bonuses, right? Kind of small for the most part. I think they don't want you to power creep your way to success. They still want you to. I'm sure it gets crazier, and there are probably things that will kind of amplify those traits, but for the most part, they want you to kind of. They want this. They want you to skill your way through the game. They don't want you to just brute force through it with just pure stats, which Souls games are kind of notorious for, is that once you find kind of the busted thing in that game, or you find like once you get your weapons and armor over a certain point, especially your weapons, once you get your weapons past a certain point, you just kind of, the way that the stat scaling and stuff on weapons just kind of gets obscene. But in this one, at least for especially in the first one, I don't remember there being a point in the game where I just kind of steamrolled through things. I'm actually playing through the easiest difficulty, and yes, I know what you're gonna say. What a scrub. I'm an old man. I like to play games to experience them at this point. There are other games that I play that are hard. Go watch my Escape from Tarkov streams. But for this particular game, I wanted to see. I had to see how they were going to improve, because like I said, the first one was so good. It was so good. It was so refreshing to see a take on the Souls-born genre from a kind of relatively unknown studio and do it in a way that was actually different. That made me want to keep playing more of it. And this one kind of continues to improve, and that's kind of the big takeaway from all of this, is that if you like the first one, you're gonna like this one too. It's definitely better. They've cleaned up a lot of things. There's definitely a lot more polish. You can tell that they wanted to. They kind of took that thing to heart of, hey, do the thing that you did before, but better. Sometimes studios will they get a lick of success and they will kind of change for the sake of changing. I don't know if maybe because they just don't want to be a one-trick pony, but these devs seem to have kind of done their homework and done what they needed to do in order to properly make a sequel. But again, there's also a lot more polish. There's a lot more voice work in this one. The story definitely seems to be a little bit more fleshed out. In the first one, I'll be honest, I could not really tell you the story other than I was supposed to go explore other worlds and stop the world from ending. That's about how much I remember of the first one. I remember being in different locales, meeting some questionable characters that seem like, I don't know if you're evil or not, sort of deal. Oh my god, I'm going to die in here. But for the most part, it seemed like, stop the Elder Gods sort of deal. I don't know how you stop an Elder God. Usually it doesn't end well for you, but that seemed to be the goal. Oh, okay. I didn't need to be... I'm gonna die because I'm trying to be fancy.
This ain't looking good.
But in this one, definitely, your character... I don't want to talk about the story too much, just because like I said, I'm not that far into it to be able to tell you what kind of savior I am, but it definitely seems to be steering you in a way to where they want you to,
Glad that's over.
they kind of want you to be the savior again, so to speak. There's characters that seem to allude to having powers that are necessary for the survival of the human race. Let's just go over here. I believe there's a checkpoint over here. Just gonna blow that up. Go ahead and solve our problem. There is a checkpoint over here. Yes. Fantastic. Whoop. Oh, that's creepy. So this is probably gonna end up, you know, you've played enough Dark Souls or video games in general. This should be kinda obvious to you. Let's go ahead and rest here, and we'll kind of do a roundup here of you've seen about maybe 30 minutes of this game, so let's kind of do a little bit of roundup of what I think so far. So I'm going to turn down the game volume here. So basically, this is more or less to what I see as a fantastic follow-up to the first game. There's definitely improvement here. You can see that there are definitely pieces of the game that have been polished. The texture work seems a lot better, you know, and let's talk technical. The texture work seems better. The performance definitely seems better. You know, there's still a little bit of hiccups here and there. DLSS being broken for a lot of the profiles at the time of recording this is a little, that kind of sucks. But hopefully most people will be able to check this out on the medium or low settings and be able to kind of run it at least at 60 FPS, 1080p, in order to be able to fully kind of experience the game. Seems to be a little bit more story this go around. You know, a little bit more attention to detail in creating a narrative that you can identify with. That's another thing as well, is your character actually speaks and has voice lines and the cutscenes there are fully voiced, which is a good and a bad thing, right? You know, there's definitely a sense of escapism whenever you play these games that you almost, like, some people kind of almost wish that the protagonist doesn't talk so that way they can kind of self-insert. To me, it's okay, especially the way that some of the line delivery is a little bit weird, but it's fine. It's kind of goofy. It's kind of cheesy. But whenever you're dealing with the subject matter of staring into the depths of oblivion drives you insane, there's a little bit of brevity needs to be involved. All the systems are about the same as what they were. They kind of didn't break what ain't broke sort of deal. And for the most part, I think it's actually a pretty good follow-up so far. We're going to keep playing more of it. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to play it on stream. This is one of those games. I don't necessarily know if this is one of those games where I want to wait till stream to play it. And at a certain point, you know, I don't want anybody watching this or my streams to be, you know, see kind of these skips in progress as time goes on, because I am still just a hobbyist streamer. I don't want to kind of be beholden to my audience on playing games. I'll be completely honest. I mean, I like playing games too much. I don't want to play this game only on stream and it take a month to beat it, especially because I just don't stream that much, or at least, right, you know, I may not be able to stream that much. But I hope you like this first look at Remnant 2, and, you know, maybe I'll do a follow-up video after, you know, at 10 or 15 hours, just to kind of do maybe we'll do that as kind of an ongoing saga. I don't know, maybe we'll call it ongoing saga. I have no idea. I don't really know the format for this, since it's the first recorded video. But if you like to see, like I said, if you like to see first impression stuff, I would check out my live streams. If you want to see me kind of focus a little bit more on the game and kind of have a little bit more of a free form kind of expansion on those thoughts on my first impressions, I would definitely check out these videos. I will be trying to do these for games that I check out, especially in the next couple of months. At the time of this recording, it is July. So we're actually generally summer is usually there's a summer drought of games. There's usually a couple of months before you start getting kind of the real big hard hitters, but we've already gotten some pretty good games during the summer. Diablo 4 released, this released. The Escape from Tarkov wipe is going to be in August, so there's a lot of stuff to play. I've been playing Final Fantasy on the side, but at least for right now, Remnant 2 definitely has my attention. I encourage you to check it out. We're not going to do ratings or anything. It's just I really think especially if you haven't played the first Remnant, this one is definitely a really good way to jump into it. It's polished enough to, I think that it is worth your money. I think that it differentiates itself from other Soulsborne games, and especially the FromSoft games, just enough to where I think it is something different. And it's just a cool second attempt by a studio that seems to be a passion project for them. They could have, I think the base game is $40 on Steam. They could have charged 60 for this. They could have charged 70 for this, I think. But I believe the base game is 40 on Steam right now. And hopefully, this gives you an idea of whether or not you want to play it. And hopefully it gives you kind of enough information as a buyer to tell whether or not this is something you want to spend your money on. As always, please do your research. Don't take my word for it. Go watch my live streams or my live stream VOD of this, of me playing it with first impressions, and you can kind of see kind of what I had to do in order to tweak it to get it to where I wanted to play. You also get to see, just as a warning, you will have to see kind of some of the opening story bits. So if you're not into spoilers, I apologize, but it's a first impression stream. There's at some points it can't be avoided. But instead, check this out. I really think you should check this out. I think it's going to be good, and I think it's going to continue to be good for probably dozens and dozens of hours. There does seem to be some co-op stuff in here, and it seems like it carried through the things from Remnant 2, where you can replay dungeons on higher difficulties or replay areas on higher difficulties for more loot drops, stuff like that. So there's probably already a growing multiplayer community around it. The discussion forums seem to be pretty active. I'm sure there are Discords that are also pretty active for LFG and such. But please check this out. I think it's a good game. I think if you're into Soulsborne games, you will also like it. And if you like the first Remnant, you will definitely like this one. But thank you very much for sticking around to the end of the video. And, as always, let's learn to be better together. And please check out my live streams. I try to stream between Monday to Friday at around 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And we'll try to get more videos of this kind of stuff out, maybe on Sundays. We'll see. I'm not sure yet. But thanks for sticking around if you're still here, and I'll see you later.